Okay, part 2 of CSCI 335, Friday, February 26, 2021. We're going to be looking at how to make a HUD with help from C++. Basically, we're making a player meter that'll just kind of raise in value as the game progresses. So, my idea is that we'll hit objects and the meter will go up. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and launch Visual Studio. Anytime you're making C++ changes, it's a good idea to start with Visual Studio and then just open up your project file. So I'm opening this up. And we're actually going to go into the editor, create our C++ classes from there, because that'll enable us to inherit from the widget. And then in the widget, in the C++ side, we're going to then put the variables, the player power variable, namely. So this is my create actor that I was working on a little bit ago. Going to go ahead and launch debug without debug. That'll just launch the editor. After it's done building, that is. Which is taking a bit. One other thing we're going to want to do is the actor itself can have a, like the player, can have a variable for the power. That's probably the best design to do, so we'll probably go ahead and add a variable to the player as well, and that variable will just have to be updated on the HUD itself. That's certainly taking long enough. Might pause recording for a second. I'm just going to pause recording for a second so you don't have to watch it do nothing. Okay, it's done building now, and it's launching my project CPP, the editor for that. Now that this is loaded, so the idea is we're going to have a meter up here that just shows the total power currently of the player. I'm going to go ahead and say create new C++ class. Notice that there's a lot of options here of what you want to come from. Will probably be a want to be a widget. If you click the show all classes button, you can see where that all the stuff that is possible to be. Again, this derives from the class that we pick here, so we want to be careful and pick the right class. So it looks like there's widget component down here. I don't think that's what we want. We want widget, native widget host, panel widget, content widget, widget switcher. These are the different ones that we can use. We're just going to pick widget. and call it widget power. My widget power. Go ahead and hit create class. And this will automatically load the code to the project and try to do a rebuild for us. Let me get the right thing up here on my other computer. Just grab this thing. While that's going, I'm just going to take a look at something quick here. Which it looks like this computer froze. Notice that says compiling C++ code, so here's where it's actually going through and making the new class and compiling it, which is what we want. It also says it did a hot reload, which is fine. As I mentioned before, sometimes hot reloads are kind of problematic, but if it works, and you can go ahead with it. I just wanted you guys to kind of be aware that sometimes it's going to be problematic. The way you would see that is your editor would probably crash. Our editor didn't crash in this case, so it's probably fine. We also see that we have my widget power right here. So that's great. And if we take a look at, it's going to ask us to reload. If we take a look at our project, we're going to see that we have the new widget type in there as well. Widget power right here. So, yeah, and I just want to make sure we made the right type. Notice that this says U class. That's a dead giveaway that this is a UE4 class. This is a macro that's used to basically make sure that we get the right UE4 classes inside of it. So we're called UMyWidgetPower, and it's a public U widget. And actually, I think I want to make a minor change just based on what I'm seeing. UWidget has another derived class that's actually called UserWidget. So I made a slight error here. But we can fix it. That's the power of C++, is we can fix it right away. We just say include userWidget.h. So if you ever want to change stuff in C++, it's really easy. And then we're going to inherit from userWidget instead. I'm going to go ahead and shut down my UE4 right now because I'm making CPP changes. So I'm going to call it a userWidget. We generate body. Now we want to have a property in here for the power. So usually the standard C++ way of doing this is to make it as a private. But because we're using UE4 C++, you'll see them commonly used as protected. So we make this a U property. And the U property we're going to pick is blueprint. Read only. This is how you make it a private, basically, is you say blueprint read only. This means the blueprint can read from it, but it can't actually set it. The category is what it'll show up as. I'm just going to call this player power HUD. Player power is probably good enough. And then I'll say meta. equals bind widget. This one's just sort of needed because we're going to do some binding with that property, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So that's sort of when you're declaring new variables in C++ inside of UE4, you usually are going to do something like this where you call out what type of property it is to UE4. I should make some notes of this. So details on step 2, which is above. Make it inherit from user widget. Add a uProperty directive for the power. This is similar to a variable, like a private variable. From CSCI 205. So what we're going to do is back over here. This is the way it has to look. It's a blueprint read-only. That's the category, and it's bindable. Now you do it just like you normally do your variables, your protected variables. So we're going to make it a property. Player power for meter is probably a good way of calling it. And let me check one other thing. All right, we also want to have a set because since we've made this private, essentially, we made it protected with blueprint read-only, we want to make a U function that's blueprint callable. And this will make these things show up in blueprints, so that's kind of nice. This one we're going to call void set power value. This is going to take a float for the value. Now, this one, the set meter value, important things to note here are this is a, let me go to definition of that quick. This is a, this can be const because the value coming in shouldn't be changing. It should just be whatever value you call this function with. This is the thing that actually changes, right? So when we go up to the CPP version of this, here's the CPP version. I'm going to say void my widget power. And the function name we called it, this is just review of 205 stuff basically, is set power value. And now we're in this separate CPP file. We're going to set it as such. We're going to say player power for meter equals whatever value is coming in. And in that sense, you're doing the same kind of stuff you did in 205. And that's that for that part. Now we can go ahead and, so that power for meter is going to be able to be, and we actually also, like, my goal with this tutorial is basically just to show that you can have your variables set in CPP. You can do even more than that, but that's all we're doing for now. So I also want to get, and this is sort of standard operating procedure for UE4 C++ programming. We're going to have a get power value. That's going to return a float. And that's just going to be in here. And as we guessed it, we're just going to return clear or meter. That's all we're going to do. So I've done my first little bit of C++ programming here for the widget. We can even do more if we want, but like, for example, we could have the widget a pointer to a progress bar that's created inside of this widget if we wanted. That's one thing we did in our game, in our noise paradox game. But I'm just starting with the basics for now. You can kind of do whatever you want in the CPP file. You can create things, spawn things, bind things, whatever you need to do. Oh, can't find user widget.h. Let me see what I did for that particular error message. User widget.h. I think it's in components, maybe. Try that. Otherwise, I'll pause it quick and fix it and come back. I think that's going to do the trick. Oh, no, that's not it. Hold on a second. I'm going to pause this quick so I can find the error and come back. Okay, we're back. Just so you know what was going on behind the scenes, in order to fix that problem, I just queried user widget because I knew that's what I wanted. And they've got plenty of documentation on this. It looks like, kind of tells you here, runtime /umg /blueprint. So blueprint was the problem. You could either include this whole thing, or it shows you right here to include blueprint /user widget.h. So I was able to find that with a quick Google search, and now I'm back in business. So I'm going to run this. And then what we'll do is we'll create the progress bar on that particular widget blueprint. Then we'll attach the widget to the player. I'll probably do it the old-fashioned way where I'm just prototyping it and just attach it directly, because in the interest of saving time, but it could be its own HUD as well. So here's my widget power. Notice that's a user widget now, which is what we want. And this is actually using my compiled CPP. Open it up, which, I don't know what just happened there. Why didn't it open it up? Weird. Oh, I know. We have to, so yeah. So one thing you got to keep in mind, and I almost made this mistake, is once you create your C++ class, keep in mind that that is just a C++ class. So, so details on step, now we're on step 3. So the error I just made was, once we have the widget, we now make a blueprint out of that widget. And this is standard operating procedure. So what you'll have is your CPP class, which is my widget, which is coming off of user widget. Then in BP, we're going to have my widget BP. And then in that, now we finally place the progress bar and everything else. All right, so the way we do that is we go into UE4, go upper directory here to our content for third-person CPP, blueprints, add new. Now, the one that we created is going to be, this is going to be a new blueprint class, and we just have to search on my widget power it's called. And I'm going to call it my widget power BP because it's a blueprint. All right, so I'm going to go into this. This should open up no problem now. And now inside of here is where I'm actually going to place the progress bar. Right, so the progress bar is going to be in here. Progress bar right here. It's huge at first. Make it smaller. Where's my canvas? Maybe something like that. And I'm going to compile it, and that's my progress bar at this point. So it's called progress bar 36. I'm going to rename this progress bar. Now what I need to do is oops, that didn't take. Rename progress. Bar. I don't know why it keeps doing that, but oh, maybe because it's variables checked. Oh, I guess because that's interesting. It's not letting me rename it. Let me try that. Click is variable off. There we go. I guess because it was tied to the variable, and now I think if we click on is variable, because we will want to set it like a variable, but so if you click off on that first, you should be able to get it. Now what we're going to do is in the graph, on the tick, we want to say, and it renamed it back to progress bar 36. Well, that's okay, because we want it to be a variable, so we're going to do a get. We want to set percent So here's where we're going to update the progress bar to be whatever the percent. This percent takes a float, right? So that's going to be a float from 0 to 1. The value is going to be the value coming from my widget blueprint, which if we right click here, we can type in power, and we see power right there, get power value. So we're going to go down here, get the power value, and use that to set the percent. And we got it. So now we have C++ backing this, and we're getting power value, which came from C++, and it's going in there. So one way of going about this, now we need it to be tied to the player. Right now, the player has no idea where progress bar is, right? So in order to make this work, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want the player to update either we want to take that power value from the player, which is probably the best way to do it, or we want the player to update the widget. I'm going to show you the player updating the widget first. So player updating the widget would be we basically go into our blueprint for our third-person character. Open full blueprint editor here. And in event begin play, we're going to attach it. Do an add to viewport. First, of course, we have to create the widget. So I'm going to call create widget first. Create widget. Add to viewport. I'm going to create my power BP. Make sure you select my power BP here. Yeah, it's saying target must have a connection. Target is the widget object. We have to return the value to here. So that kind of makes sense. And then what we can also do is this, I think I might, this widget BP, if you want to just see this working, let's set the value to like half, so like 0.5. So we're going to say set power. This isn't the way we'll eventually want to do it, but we're going to set it to like 0.5 right here. So we go to set power value, set it to 0.5 immediately, and then add to viewport. And then run the game. Whoa, it's coming in as massive for some reason. Let's see what happened there. I think I know what this is. When I initially made the thing, yeah, it didn't take my change that I pumped in earlier for some reason, but now it should. I think I hadn't set save on that. Nope, hold on a second. Okay, I had to pause it for a second. I just had to fix a couple things. But you can see the power bar is now there. And it's coming from the set percent that we added while I was with you to set player power for meter. And then in the third person character, we're setting the power value immediately right there. So another way to do this would probably be to update the power value based on the player's actual power. So there's two ways to go about that. I'm going to take the C++ way because I want to kind of show you how that could be done over there. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. Save selected. So I'm going to save off our existing work. Then we're going to go to, we're going to make a modification to cpp character.h. We're going to add a power value. And maybe we'll make this blueprint read write as well. I think we probably want it up here. We'll just make it a public. I'm going to copy this existing one, and we'll make it visible anywhere. Blueprint read write. Category equals power. Category, you can put whatever you want there. And so we're going to add a float for power. Now we've got this power on the player, so we can set it, we can get it, we can do whatever we want with it. And basically I'm just going to have the update get the player, and that will percolate through the player power over to the HUD. That finished compiling. Now it's just launching. So we're gonna have the player's power be affected by, well, basically like things in the world it would be affected by, but it would go up, and we'd see the value go up in the HUD. So now, first of all, I think that when the third-person character blueprint is created, we should probably set that power value to something. So set power. Maybe we start at half or something like that. Or let's say we start at, yeah, sure. Why don't we start at half? .5. And now we're not going to have to set the widgets anymore because this was kind of improper, as I mentioned. You probably would never do it that way. You want the player's power to be separate, kind of its own thing. So we're setting it to 0.5, then we're adding viewport. Now this isn't going to work at first because we need the widget to get the player's power and set from that. So in the tick, this is setting our percent based on player power per meter, but player power per meter isn't updated yet. So we need to update player power per meter. The way we can do that is we can say get controller. Let me double check how I was doing this before to get the player. So we can say get player controller. Player controller index we want to get is 0. This will work in a single player game. In multiplayer we would have to do something a little more complex. This gets the actual player controller. We want to cast to third person character. Now we can actually get the power. I think it's this one, get my project CPP character, get power. Yep. And then so we're going to set player power. Well, let's just drag this. We want player power. We want set power value. We want the power to be that. My widget power, that's fine. And then finally, we set the percent up here. We have a, oh, yeah. We have to call get owner here. There we go. And that should do it. So we're setting the power value from the player, and then we should see it at about half. Oh, and we're not. I wonder where it's failing. So when we begin play, we set our power to 0.5. Oh, wait. Oh, no, that should be right. Event tick, get owner, get power, set power value, set percent. Oh, player power for meter. I think I'm getting my various this should be set player power. Well, we did set power value. I think that's the right one. Yeah, my widget power, set power value. Let's just trace through this once and see what's happening. And I'm actually going to skip the first one because the first one might happen before the player happens. So I'm going to take the second one because the first one might happen out of time with the player. So we're going to cast to third person, frame skip. Ooh, so the cast itself is failing. The cast itself is failing. So the actor returned is none. The player controller is third person player controller 0. Yeah, if the cast fails, we're never going to get into here. So that's my problem. We can fix that. It's just a matter of getting the right calls here. Yep. One second. Yeah, as I suspected, I just had the wrong call. Now it's loading up here. The problem was you have to get the controlled pawn from the player controller, and then you cast that to the third person character, and then you get the power value there. So what we could also do pretty quickly is we could make a new trigger. Actually, I think I have, or no, I don't have any. Make a new blueprint class for a trigger. We'll call this an actor. It's a power up. And then we'll put a crate in there so that we can touch it. I don't know what just happened there, but try to reopen it. Huh, it's not letting me modify the trigger power up for some reason, not letting me add components to it. That's strange. Try that again. I'm not sure what kind of weird state we got ourselves in. Oh, we're still playing, that's why. We were still in play game. Okay, so add component, cube, and add component collision, so that collides. And make this guy a little smaller. The box collision is where okay, that should be good enough, because all I'm going to do is now in the event graph for begin overlap, we want to cast this actor to first person or third person character. And then we're going to say get power. We're going to add stuff to it. Float plus float. We'll add maybe 0.1 to it. Then, as you guessed it, we're going to set power to whatever the result of that is. This has to go over here. We want to place our trigger in the level. Oops. There's our little trigger. Play. Doesn't look like it's hitting it, so I'm just going to place a breakpoint quick. Oh, and it might be that the triggers are not. Yeah. The box collision isn't hitting for some reason. I was worried about that because I made a child of the cube. I'm going to re-put it up here. Then I should be able to see it at least. Make it a